Hey, I'm Colin Brightfield with Rhythm Yoga. Today, we're going to be focusing on tips to make your downward facing dog better. So let's begin by discussing the general purpose of our downward facing dog pose. So the main purpose of down dog is to actually create space and length in our spine. So when we look at the pose, when we look at what goes wrong, it's often areas that become compressed and then eliminate possibility for space. So the first thing we're going to look at is the distance between our hands and feet and the distance between our hands. So for our hands, we typically want our hands to be about shoulder distance apart, but most of us have some tightness in our shoulders, so it's actually going to be beneficial to take our hands just a little bit wider than shoulder distance. You might even actually have your pinkies off the edge of your mat. And when we set up our hands, we want to make sure we're spreading our fingers as wide as we can, and we're going to concentrate on having our index fingers straight forwards. When we place our hands down, we want to make sure that we're pressing most of the weight on what I call the L's of your hands. This will be your index finger, the soft part in between your index finger and your thumb. And so both sides, it's like two L's. So hand shoulder distance, fingers spread wide, index fingers forwards, pressing through the L's of your hands. And then when we check out our feet, we want our feet about hip distance apart near the back of our mat with our big toes parallel. And to set the distance of how far they should be back, you can come into a high plank shape with your shoulders right over your wrists. And notice where your feet have to be to have your shoulders stacked directly over your wrists. So if you're a little too far forwards, then your shoulders are going to be past your wrist. And once we have the distance set up, then we want to start to work on creating the length and the space. We do that several ways. First, it's going to be noticing how we're pressing through our hands. Like I said before, pressing through the L's of the hands. And we want to push your weight back into your legs and your feet. The most common issue here is that a lot of us have tightness in the back of our legs or our hamstrings. And so we'll start and our down dog's going to look really rounded and really not creating any much length in the spine. And the way that we eliminate that rounding is actually bending the knees a little bit so you can extend back to your tailbone and send the energy all the way back. So it's okay to have your knees bent a little bit in your down dog. Next, we're going to look at the pressing through our hands. A lot of times when we press through our palms, once we get rid of the elimination of compression in our wrists, we start to maybe sometimes get hyperextension or overextending in our elbows. So that's with the arm all the way straight. It's actually bone on bone, and we're not using the cartilage. So we want to micro bend our elbows enough so that we can wrap our shoulders back away from the ears, create space at the base of the skull, and then transfer the energy back through our core and through the backs of our legs and pressing the heels down. So I'm actually creating space from my fingers all the way through the back line of my body, through to the balls of my feet. Now what do we do with our head and down dog? We want to let our head hang loose so your neck can soften and relax. Sometimes we're concerned about what the teacher might do next. We might be looking forwards and we're just crunching our neck. So we just want to let the head drop. You can set your eyes classically to your navel, but if that's a strain, you can set your eyes to your toes. The main thing here to make downward dog more of a resting pose is to use our core. So first, downward dog might seem like more of an advanced pose, and really it is. It's kind of an arm balance and inversion at the same time. But if we can use our core strength to push the weight back into our legs, then we start to create an equilibrium between the energy of our hands and the energy of our feet. And we start to approach a spot where it's about equal, and so we could stay here a lot longer because we're not straining one part of our body over another. And once we have the alignment set, we can use our Ujjayi breath or ocean sounding breath to move the energy to the pose. So downward dog is a beautiful fundamental yoga pose. It creates a lot of space in our spine. It's really helpful for developing upper body strength and for opening up the entire back line of our body. Thank you for joining us for these tips on downward facing dog. Be sure to check out our other videos on our Jai Rhythm YouTube channel.